Hello everyone, welcome back to Into Sports. I'm your host Evan. Today I'm talking about the OKC Thunder, but before I do, please click that subscribe button. 94% of you are not subscribed, so, do me a favor and click subscribe. But anyway, I know they flamed out this postseason, but I think the process executed by the 76ers shows why the Thunder have a very bright future. So, first of all, what is the process? Well, the Sixers had been a team for a number of years, a low-end playoff team. They weren't really getting anywhere. So then in 2013, they tore it all down. They traded their best players and current assets for future draft picks. Take Drew Holiday, for example, traded him for a first-round pick. They gutted the roster. And of course, since they had quality picks, not quality players, they stunk for 4 years. They were the worst team in basketball. They went 10-72 one year. But when you win 10 games, you get a reward. And that reward is a top pick. Those 4 years of tanking is how the 76ers got Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, among other players. But I'll get to that later. So how does this relate to the OKC Thunder? Well, they are executing the process 2.0. They had Paul George and Russell Westbrook, but those two wanted out. So guess what they did? They traded them for a boatload of picks and young players. They blew it up. So now they have 36 draft picks over the next 7 years, 18 of which being in the first round. And they are officially in full tank mode. How do we know that? Well, they shut down their two best players, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Al Horford, at the end of last year, not because they were injured necessarily, but because they were winning too much. That's how much they want to lose. So now OKC has the same tanking foundation, if you will, that Philadelphia once had. And I think OKC's is actually even better. So now that leads us to two questions. First, is tanking an effective concept in the NBA? And will the Thunder execute their process, as I call it, the process 2.0, better than the Sixers did? So, let's start with tanking. Does it really work? Yes! The 76ers went from garbage to Eastern Conference contenders in just 4 years. Now, that might sound like a lot, but why don't you ask Kings fans if they would take that? I bet they would. The Kings have been the 11 seed, it feels like, every year. They haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. They are in what I call lottery purgatory. They haven't been consistently bad enough to get a few top picks in a row, but not good enough to ever make the playoffs. And that is the worst place to be in. Now, I'm a Wizards fan. I would gladly trade being the 8, 9, or 10 seed every year for being horrible for about 4 years and then being real contenders in the East for multiple years after that. And this is all because the NBA is not like the NFL. The NFL is the league of parity. And that's because you can find talent anywhere and everywhere. Day 3 of the draft, some might argue that's the most important day. In the NFL last year, 45% of Pro Bowlers were first-round picks. But in the NBA, 96% of All-Stars a year ago were first-round picks. In the NBA, it's incredibly hard to find cornerstone talent outside of the first few picks. In fact, if you take the median of every All-Stars draft location, it was the 4th pick. You want top talent in the NBA? You have to be at the top of the draft. You really have to be in the top 5. So if you want to rebuild in the NBA, you either have to make incredible trades or land big-time free agents. Or more likely, you have to get a top 3, top 5 pick, you have to hit a home run, and you probably have to hit a home run more than once. The Thunder will have plenty of chances to strike gold in the top 5 with the plethora of first-round picks they have. Because even if they aren't in the top 5, they can trade up because they have so much ammunition. Now, this is a reality that OKC faces. They are not a desirable free agent destination. So unless they overpay guys, unless they offer way more money to free agents than other teams, those players are going to LA, Miami, New York, Phoenix maybe. They ain't going to Oklahoma City. Now, when you have a small market team, you have to rebuild through the draft and not free agency. So yes, I do believe tanking works in the NBA. You ask, 10 teams, if they would have taken 4 or 5 bad years to be near the top of the ladder again, they would take that. And tanking works especially for small market teams like the Thunder who can't get big time players in free agency without overpaying. But now back to the 76ers, because they are the best example of what the Thunder are trying to do. The 76ers flipped their team around in 4 years, even though they messed everything up. The Sixers actually executed the process terribly, and it still worked. In 2015, they drafted Jahlil Okafor third. Now, that wasn't a very good draft. Now, you did have Devin Booker, Kristaps, Miles Turner, who went after that, but not really their fault. You're going to have some whiffs in the draft. But 2017, that's when we have a real issue. They had the 3rd pick in the draft, but then they traded up to number 1 and took Markelle Fultz. So they traded away the pick that was Jason Tatum and an additional 1st-round pick for Markelle Fultz. Could you imagine the Sixers if they had Jason Tatum right now? I think they would have won the championship this year, hands down. But now we go to the 2018 draft. They traded away Mikal Bridges. They took him with 10th pick, traded him away for Zaire Smith and a pick. But Bridges is now a key contributor on the Suns, who might win the championship. Zaire Smith is out of the league. And the final missed opportunity, this is a big one. The Sixers, remember, this is easily forgotten. They traded for Jimmy Butler, and then he left. He walked away and didn't even play a full season in Philadelphia. That's another big opportunity they didn't cash in on. Imagine if Jimmy Butler stayed and he left, but they had to give up assets to get him. So I think Philadelphia had a successful turnaround, even though they left a lot of meat on the bone. They could have been way better. So the odds are the Thunder are going to execute better than Philadelphia did. And that's why I'm buying what the Thunder are selling. So even though the Thunder got a little unlucky in the lottery this year, they could have had 2 top 5 picks, but they just end up with number 6. They have so many picks in the future, and I do think the concept of tanking, if you really, really commit to it, works, as we saw with the Sixers. The process was a success, even though they botched the execution. So imagine if OKC nails the execution. Imagine what they could have. And OKC already has a nice building block with Shai, Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think the future is really, really bright with Oklahoma City Thunder.